I wanted to say, let me take you south, but actually from Liberia, it's kind of north. We're in Georgia, and maybe some of you know that Georgia is a country used to be a part of the Soviet Union. It's in the south of the Caucasus Mountains. So on the one side it borders to the eastern border of Turkey, in the south to Armenia and Azerbaijan, and in the north to Russia. So we're in Georgia in a deserted factory, a production plant. And in this production plant, it feels a bit like a haunted place, like you can still feel that it used to be a very busy place, but now it's completely empty, deserted. Yeah? It feels like you can still hear the voices of the workers and their footsteps in the corridors, but now the windows are broken and electricity fails every now and then, so then the light switches off and the heaters, and it's actually kind of cold. So I'm sitting in a production hall, and there's a circle of chairs, and people are looking at me, like 25 pairs of eyes, kind of expectantly. And I'm a bit nervous because these people have had not a very easy life. They are IDPs, internally displaced persons. They had to flee the region of Abkhazia in the Georgian-Abkhaz War in 1993, and now for 11 years they have been living like refugees in their own country. It's the winter of 2004. So these people are sitting there and they're talking about their experiences. For example, one old man, he has lost 2 of his sons to the fighting, and he sounds very bitter. He says defiantly, what's lost by war can be won by war. But then you look at him and you understand that he really doesn't believe his words himself, because he knows that his sons won't come back. A woman, the leader of the organization who has invited me, Allah is her name. She talks about how her family had to flee their house, how they left their house and had to walk across the Caucasus Mountains. She says, I was in my slippers. I couldn't take anything. And the worst thing was, my son was lost. I didn't know where he was for 2 weeks. We didn't know, is he alive or dead? But he was fighting with the other guys in the mountains. I sit there and I listen to their stories and I ask myself, what does it take? What does it take to cope with these experiences? What does it take for them to find a way to talk about what they've seen that causes empathy and helps connect them to their former neighbors they used to live next door to? What does it take for them to make peace with their own past? And while we're sitting there in this circle, a wonderful smell comes up in the room, because in the next door, in the factory, the women of the NGO have set up a makeshift kitchen, and they're baking bread. It's called khajapuri. It's bread with cheese in it, so it smells like fresh bread and melted cheese, and also they cook other dishes, so it smells like coriander and khmeli sunili and other spices that you can smell only in Georgia. So during the breaks and in the evenings, we sit there in this makeshift kitchen and talk and eat and sing. And for me, it really feels like coming home. I really feel very comfortable in this cold, deserted factory. Like this makeshift kitchen is like the heart of the place. It's a really big difference to my usual working circumstances, because at the time, I'm a historian. I'm working on my PhD in St. Petersburg in Russia, and I sit a lot of time in the archives. So I sit there going through stacks of files, leafing through papers that smell really dusty, and I'm really a bit bored. And you know that for a historian, being bored by archives is like a hairdresser who is allergic to shampoo. It's not really good. I'm researching like 2 kinds of different stories. One story is the story told officially by the state, the Soviet state, in the late 1940s, early 1950s, about the Great Fatherland War, about heroic soldiers fighting for their land. And the other side is the story of the civilians, of the people in the besieged city of Leningrad dying of hunger. And it's a terrible picture of desperation and fear and hunger. And yes, and it's not so easy to get these two stories, I find, in the documents together. So, yeah, there are two different stories about the siege I see here. And the other thing is I'm really afraid that I have to get stuck in this archive. I feel like I'm sitting there producing footnotes and footnotes for the work of other people, and nobody will really learn about the things I learn about remembering war. So while I'm sitting there in this archive, I'm desperately longing for people who could need my knowledge and who could use my knowledge. And here I am, in this deserted factory in Georgia, with the people who have just encountered the war, who had just a recent story of violence behind them, and they need an experienced person to talk to. And sitting in that kitchen, I felt like it makes a difference. It makes a difference for them that I've come from far away to listen to their stories. After 4 days of workshop, one of the women comes to us, to my colleague and me, and she says, "It was good to talk to you about this, Andrea and Marina. It really means something to me to talk to you about our fears and our hopes, about our homesickness, and about this situation that's so difficult for us." So what I thought is the following: why don't you go to Abkhazia? We cannot go, but you can go there and you can work with the people there. You can listen to their stories and you can talk to them. Maybe it will change their perspective too. So 1 year later, we're at the checkpoint, and it's a border that leads from Georgia proper to Abkhazia. It's a bridge across the river Ingur. So we're standing on this bridge, and Mary is standing there with us, and as I walk over the bridge, I see that she's crying. She waves to us and says, "Udachi." It means good luck in Russian. So for many years after that, I've been traveling between Georgia proper and Abkhazia, collecting stories, exchanging stories. I've met many people, former soldiers, former fighters, mothers and relatives of fallen people, and also young people who ask themselves which stories to remember and how to talk about this past. I've learned one thing, that when you have two different stories on two sides, the narratives, they are separate and linked at the same time. So the things that one side remembers very vividly are forgotten by the other side. And if you have two conflicting sides, then one purpose, one task can be to bring these stories together and to remind the people of what they have forgotten in their narratives. So it's like a zipper. When you put the two halves together, you can see the whole picture. Yes, my time is over. And, the only thing I wanted to say in the end is, now I'm going to different conflict regions. I'm invited to countries like Myanmar and Ukraine. And I've set up a little agency. It's called Change of Perspective.